Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to the 1.71 dev server. Now the headline for this video might be the new maps, and I will show you both maps in a drive-through. But first I wanted to show you also two test drives. First with the Object 120, and the next target is here the new M60 with the era protection plates. And I have heat loaded. Let's see what it does. First shot, and look at the hit cam. There we go. The error plates actually vanish where you get hit. And that is very nice indeed. Then the same on the roof. And we can see not the entire turret disappears, just where the fragments of the initial explosion actually hit the error plates. Same goes for the side of the remaining error plates. They also can get damaged, and the question is, what happens afterwards? The simple answer is, you are just a normal M60 in this respect. I assume the same is going also, or will work for HESH shells, but I have not tried it out because I didn't get the same test drives with the same targets. Then let's talk about the Kampfpanzer 70 and also the American variant, the MBT-70. Now they have spaced armor, and that also helps surprisingly well against heat. The lower plate not, but I also didn't have an absolutely proper look at them. The steel blue armor on the Chieftain Mark 10 is awesome, however it can't really withstand this heat FS shell from the Object 120, which is ridiculous. I think it is one of the strongest, if not the strongest heat FS shell, especially at rank 5. Remember, this is the Soviet premium tank at rank 5. Also the new turrets, they feel a little bit light, I have to say, but that's okay. It's just a nice eye candy, I guess, that now no longer vanishes into the ground. Yeah, the next thing that I wanted to show you is also how it works against the MBT-70 with the heat FS shell, but also what you can still do with a high caliber HE shell, because we also saw this in the April Fool's event, that the high caliber HE shell, when shot trapping a tank, did enormous damage. And here we can see it goes down and ignites the fuel tank. Now this is not a blow up incident, because there is no ammunition in the front of the vehicle, much like on a King Tiger. And also we still see the over-penetration with an HE shell through the optics of the, I guess, commander's hatch. So that is a bit ridiculous, and I hope this gets reworked. Again, everything is subject to change. Now those are also now the test shootings for HESH, sorry, against Russians. Now remember, technically I have 127 millimeters of penetration, except when it comes to angles above 60 degrees, and which nation has more than 60 degrees of armor plates when it's getting slightly angled? The Russians, yes. And there we suddenly drop to 100 millimeters. So everything that is 60, 61 millimeters and above that needs to have a thinner armor plate compared to what you need to have when you want to reflect or not let a HESH shell pass through with 127 millimeters. And that means when the target is angled and therefore now then has 60 plus degrees, you really struggle to penetrate all those Russian tanks with 100 and also 120 millimeter plates that previously were one-shots for HESH shells regardless where you hit them. Best example is here, this Russian medium tank T-62, and you can see it doesn't go through. Previously I would have killed him like 2 or 3 times over by now. Even the splash through the turret front doesn't work, but here you can see through the 80 millimeters it goes through. Granted, this is a bit less than 60 degrees of angle, but you get the drill. The next thing is how the damage pattern now happens. So the it doesn't follow the line of sight of the shell through the armor, but now it's important how the armor plate is angled compared to the rest of the tank. So because now the damage goes 90 degrees from the armor plating away, like a proper HESH spalling effect should work. This is okay, so if you penetrate, or if you aim for a plate that you want to penetrate, you also have to keep in mind the X-ray view of the tank, so where do you hit to go through. And let me just show you quickly how it works when you go a few angles away from the 60 degrees. One shot, like before. So I guess it's not the question how you deal damage, but if you deal damage at all. And I think that is the big change. Now I need to do a few rocket testings as well, but it seems to be different and okayish right now when it comes to rocket, RP3s, HVRs. We will see how it really impacts when the patch goes live. So the killing zone right now is very thin for Russian medium tanks. If you hit them on the upper part of the upper frontal plate, you deal massive true damage. But if you then go a bit lower, you have a higher chance of penetrating on flat ground, that is, and you even should consider to switch more often to APDS if it is reliable, that is, which is something that I kind of don't think it still is. Yeah, from the Type 74 and the M60 A1 AOS, you know, with the improved APDS shell, I think it's okayish. It's just a little bit more reliable and a little bit better overall than the normal L7 stock APDS shell. But you get the sense. So here we are on the new map, Japan, and I have to give full credit for the visual team of Gaijin that does the graphics. The map, like the folder map, is stunning. And there are two reasons. First of all, this is a new map. I'm not used to it, but it's also green. There are plants everywhere. This is not a war-wrecked town. This is not something that has been bombed before. It's green, it's not spring, it's not autumn, it's not winter, it's like summer or late spring, let's put it that way, and I like that. For example, when you compare it to Hürtgen Forest or Berlin, you know, both have this gray, brown kind of color theme, which I don't like. So yes, that's visual eye candy, I get that. But what's the map like? Well, it's big, it is full of vegetation, it has a lot of ridge lines. There are some channel fights for the heavies, but there seem to be also flanking opportunities for medium and light tanks, and I like that. So we will see how it turns out throughout the different possibilities that you have with how the matches work out, which nation has an advantage or a disadvantage when it comes to capturing A, B or C. The B point remembers me of a certain map part that we already have in the game. A remembers me of another part, so it's nothing completely extremely new, you know. Gaijin did not found the wheel new again, so to speak, if you know what I mean. But it is really a glorious background, beautiful. You can see here this snow white mountain with the top of it being snow white, that is. There are a lot of trees, a lot of vegetation. It's different vegetation, I have to say. We have purple flowers covering the floor, which is something up until this point unseen in War Thunder. What really bothers me a little bit is the name, Japan. So this represents all of Japan. I don't know that, I never have been to Japan, but what I really know for sure, if a map is called Japan, it's unlikely that we see a second Japan map, if you know what I mean. So that's there. Then I also wanted to talk about Fulda, which we'll see in just a few minutes. And while I just drive along the map here with this British tank, I also wanted to just simply say that this map looks okay-ish from a overall design when it comes to combat. So you have your hull down locations, you have your ambush locations, you have sometimes even long to mid-range sniping sections, all the good stuff, and it seems fairly balanced. How it really will work out, we will see when the patch drops and when this map all gets played at all. Now you see one difference here when you look at the minimap and the last quarter of the map, the southern quarter, so to speak, is red. This is a zone where you can't get into, so that might just reduce the spawn camping incidences. No more can a tank really go behind your spawn points and snipe you from the back, and this is a good change. This is a very good change because it's not really that important for the gameplay. However, it also reduces the combat zones. I think that, for example, G7 still could be open for all tanks, but that's just a very brief thought. Now that brings me then to the overall thought process on map design overall. This has nothing to do with the current dev server, but I thought it would be as good as any time to talk about it. War Thunder is a game that is not restricted really when it comes to efficient combat ranges, when it comes down to spotting mechanics and so on, like other free-to-play titles such as Armored Warfare or the more famous one, World of Tanks, and that is really a selling point of the game. However, the community is part of a problem that I witnessed lately, and that is long-range shooting becomes more and more unpopular, and all the balance that relies on certain tech trees then goes into the trash ton for the very simple reason that certain nations can't really use their advantages. And you might be surprised that even the Russians are falling to this to a certain degree. So this is here the Fulda map, and I just let the gameplay run in the background, just flying over it with the Spitfire Mark IIB, a plane by the way that I like. You might be surprised by that. And I think Fulda, it's just beautiful. And let's just briefly talk about Fulda, compare it to Kursk. And then let's talk about Kursk, Fulda, all the old and potentially new maps. So Fulda again is a rather big map. It also looks very open, but much like Kursk, it offers a lot of possibilities for just simply going around and hiding into obvious positions, or between ridge lines, between houses, and sometimes even within houses. You have again very long range sniping possibilities. There is overall a very central big hill that just prevents very long sniping from cap to cap with the castle on top of it. There at outside of the map actually there is this power plant. I'm not quite sure it's nuclear or not, doesn't matter really. Sadly, we can't blow it up to find out. However, the part that I'm talking here about is the map feels green, it looks green, it feels open, yet it gives possibilities for tank destroyers, for heavy tanks, light tanks, medium tanks, AAA vehicles alike. So everybody has here a good chance to perform. A really interesting thought of mine is, can we snipe from the castle? Can we snipe from there into the opposite half of the map? That will be interesting to find out. So beautifully modeled, very German I'd say. It's really convincing, I like it. So big thumbs up for Gaijin here. I think I will enjoy this map. I have not played very often on this map, I have to say, but I'm just doing here also this test drive, or this custom battle rather, for myself to show it to you. And that brings me now to the size of a map. Now the one thing that I really miss sometimes in Tank RB, and this is again not really part of the dev server, is the missing of tank warfare. In my opinion, we have not enough tanks to form a proper front line. It's too easy to breach through a semi-front line, if you know what I mean. Light tanks do not have really that powerful mobility advantage that they should have to flank and to really try to breach into enemy lines, because a heavy tank can do that as well, but it's not, you know, break through an enemy line. He can go around because of the map size and just that there are not enough players. What do I mean by that? Well, the simple changes that I would propose for Tank RB would be the following. I want 20 versus 20 players, or even 24 to 25 players versus 25 players. It is there. War Thunder's game engine can handle it, as far as I can tell. And we saw that in Enduring Confrontation tests already, although it was like 32 bots versus 32 bots with flavored with some players. And then also raise the initial spawn points for each player to around about 600 to 700 instead of 450 that we have currently. And then you can keep the spawn point costs. That would go then into the gameplay as the following. You can spawn guaranteed multiple times even if you're top tier, and you have even more guaranteed spawns if you're low tier. That then offers for more kills for every player. Therefore, hopefully, if I understand it correct how the reward mechanics work, also overall better income and more fast patient gameplay with more tactics. Also, in conjunction with the new spawn point protection mechanic, this leads to less frustration, more fun, and more playtime of every player in the game, and maybe even therefore more money for Gaijin in the long run. I hope I don't have to explain the details to you, because happy players are, in my opinion, the ones that spend most money on the game. I have to say this, back in the days I was convinced that War Thunder is really a worthy game for my money. I didn't mind spending you know, money here for faster crew training, for expanding my slots or crew slots, and all that is something different compared if you have to pay for upgrades like HESH shells and all that, or repair kits, fire extinguishing, yada yada yada. All that is my approach towards a free-to-play title. And when then we have more players, more happy players, queue time gets reduced, you name it. Then we have to also address the decompression of the higher tiers in particular, where this step will definitely be a step backwards, and a massive in this respect, if it would go live like that. Again, it's the test server, everything is subject to change. I say it here again. I'm not ranting, I'm just saying if and what and when. So, as you can see here, the map offers a lot of possibilities to go around. I really like it, the square shape when it comes to diagonal warfare is actually extending the overall battlefield by quite some bit, I have to say. It will be not a very pleasant map for slow tanks like T95 and Mouse, and unupgraded, rather sluggish tanks will not have much fun here. But fast tanks, tanks with armor, tanks with the combination of decent mobility and armor and long range sniping capabilities, APDS, HESH, strong APHE shells, they will find that this map will be something really good. And that's basically it. So I'm just driving here alongside, let you enjoy the scenery as I did before. A few honorable mentions here. What about this red line in the middle of the map? Is this the border between East and West Germany? I don't know. It seems a little bit unlikely, but it could be possible. Although it is unlikely how close the military bases are to this point. It's called the Fulda Gap because it's a very tactical point of view or strategical point of view, and through that gap in Germany, it was expected for the Red Army to breach through in a war with massive tank forces, because it was easy to pass through this section of Germany, and it was relatively close to the central part of Germany, cutting it in half military wise. So that's a little bit of background, but I'm not quite sure what this red line is. If that is the border or it has some other meaning, I'm not quite sure. So we are here on the castle, or within the castle. It is very nice. It will be fantastic for brawling. So also for AAA positions, I expect here some ridiculous action going on. And just look at the point of view that I have right now. Removing the UI, look at that. Just look at that. You could make a wallpaper out of this screenshot. Unedited, just like that. Boy, does it look good. Especially with the sun rays or sunset, I'm not quite sure. This is fantastic footage, really. So, going on here, let's have another look at the map. Again, this map, I expect it to play out like Kursk, that people initially like it, then they dislike it, then they complain about that it takes so long to get to the action. And I think, you know, if you have a long battle but you get a good reward for it, I think people wouldn't mind. But with the income for RP being, let's say, challenging, especially with other premium account and a handful of talismans and premium vehicles, it takes really ages to unlock high tier vehicles. And with the costs of rank 6 vehicles being between 320,000 and 390,000 research points, it takes a while. If you get like just 2,000, if you just get like 2,000 RP per battle on average, you know, it takes a while. It takes around about 200 battles for a tank to be unlocked. Just think about it. It will take ages. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the last thing that there is to talk about. And I think the summary of this dev server is, it was surprisingly long open with the second time it was open. Like this has been open for like over 12 hours right now. It's approaching like 20 hours by the time this video is recorded. That is something that I really want to see more often, that we have really a long time to test stuff. Then the era armor protection works like it is intended, so after the first hit it falls off, but not through the entirety of the tank, just where it gets hit and around it. I'm not quite sure if you can regenerate this this era protection in a cap circle. It would be really nice if we see that as well, because after the first hit you're vulnerable at that spot, even to HESH. But I think this is how it should work. Then composite armor, it still works surprisingly well. I still have to do a lot of testing with many people when the patch goes live and I have the vehicle. Or I can shoot somebody else to find out what is what, you know, if you just can simply add up the armor values, how useful it really is, and so on, all the good stuff. Then we will see how also the BR balancing works out when not just the patch drops, but weeks afterwards, when we can see what Gaijin will do to rebalance it. I mean, in the beginning it's okay that we see just for 1 or 2 weeks a completely new compression issue. If it gets solved afterwards, that is something that I would like to see. Again, Japan and Fulda, both maps are really nice to drive on, really fun. And here you can see the spawn protection in action. And finally, that's the end for me today. Let me know in the comment section what you think about the dev server, the new vehicles. Are you looking forward to it? What would be your approach towards certain issues, or what would you propose for changing in War Thunder? Let me know in the comment section, and as usual, please give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other in the skies and on the battlefields of War Thunder.